shepherds, the dog days of summer in full swing. The thistle, pokeweed, and blackberry canes have grown taller than me. I'm pretty short, so that's not much of a feat as it sounds. There's enough clover and wildflowers, as well as timothy and orchard grass. The sheep can afford to eat piggly, only grazing on their favorite foods, but they still enjoy their tree hay. Mostly honeysuckle and other non-native invasive plants. Rotational grazing would probably help with that by encouraging them to clean their plate, so to speak. But the trade-off is a time commitment for me, at least in setting up and breaking down each fence line. Our pasture is still in its young stage. I've planted several native trees, and I'm aiming for a more silvopasture or food forest and sustainable ag kind of setup, so the trees are super tiny right now. But as the farm rolls into a more established phase, it'll probably open up more time, which I'll probably end up filling with the bigger butterfly garden, orchard, and berry patch. The projects never end, do they? But weeds and trees aren't the only thing growing. Our lambs have grown so big too, even though they're getting super huge to me. But look how close to the mama's size they're getting. They still are nursing, as funny as it looks. It never gets old. They're so rough. The lambs are at that awkward young stage where they're still treated as a baby by the flock, but also starting to learn to be a little independent from the parent. The lambs tend to enjoy hanging around their play yard, napping or relaxing mainly, while the rest of the flock graze off in the four corners of the map. With the plants growing so tall and dense, the sheep seem to disappear into the grass and young forest. I'm so glad I put bells on their collars. It really helps me keep track of the sheep through sound alone. The flock though have their own method to keep tabs on each other. Think of it as a sheep version of Marco Polo. It's super cute. Sometimes I can recognize their calls, such as, "Hey, wait for me," or "Milking time." But other times I do wonder, what are they saying? Especially when one is hollering a lot and the other sheep are just silent. They still manage though. Anyway, this week I've been craving some homemade yogurt, granola topped with some freshly picked berries. We have a few berry patches throughout the parts of the forest and fields, but just like with the goats, our sheep are really enjoying eating berry bushes. But some of the bushes have evaded getting eaten, both by our livestock, but also all the wildlife around. I have a really small berry patch. Allows you to grow enough to provide for me, but also some of the birds, but not groundhogs, bunnies, and chickens. Those guys are so voracious. So to deter the chickens, I planted some rocks red, scattered them around the strawberries and rose bushes. Since the chickens decided to eat berries and flowers, I swear, this worked, but also monkey-pawed the chickens into targeting green tomatoes and my gooseberry bushes. Maybe the wild birds are to blame, but overnight, all of my gooseberry bushes have been stripped of all of their berries. Happily, I still managed to pick some wild raspberries, black and red currants, strawberries, and blueberries. I love berries so much, it's so hard to have a favorite. How about you? To deter the bunnies and groundhogs, I've been relying on our plethora of small to large predators, mainly foxes as an ally. I like to think that these relationships with some predators help keep the worst predators at bay. Kind of like how possums tend to keep raccoons away. This is all anecdotal really though. Now we have our berries, let's get on to our yogurt. Sheep's milk yogurt may sound a bit odd, but let's put it this way. Cows conquered big ag and grocery stores, but when it comes to small farms and artisan producers, sheep and goats rule the roost. Sheep and goats have been a large part of human history, almost 10,000 years worth. Yogurt in comparison for about 6,000 years. Sheep's milk makes a wonderful, thick, and creamy yogurt. This is mainly due to the high mineral content of sheep's milk, but not only that, because of the short fatty acid chains, it's easier for our stomachs to digest. The same with goat's milk. Yogurt is made through a process of fermentation, introducing heat-loving bacteria into prepared milk, letting the now cultured milk then ferment for a preferred time, usually several hours, before chilling and straining and enjoying it. Sheep milk, like cow milk, makes a beautiful thick yogurt. But if you're using goat milk, you may notice your yogurt not set as firm as you prefer, but we have techniques to dial in your yogurt to your favorite consistency, tartness, and flavor. For a simple, easy peasy yogurt, all we need is a sterilized jar, stove, oven, and starter culture. Oh, and milk. Any milk will do. Here I'm using full-fat sheep's milk, collected from our mini flock of Shetland sheep and our token dairy tanker. She puts her heart into our milkiness. Our starter culture can be commercially prepared, unflavored yogurt from your local grocer. There are several good brands to choose from. The main thing to look for in a starter culture is that it's alive, or that it still has live cultures listed on the label, or a packet of specific freeze-dried yogurt culture strands. which are available online. To heat the milk up, I really prefer to use a double boiler method. If you prefer to use a direct heat, such as here, it helps to keep winding the pot and stirring often. This helps prevent the milk from scalding. A simple and rustic double boiler is placing several canning lids on the bottom of the pan, then balance the jar into that. This helps promote the water flowing around the jar and insulates the jar from the direct heat from the base of the pan. And then I just let it sit there. No stirring, no minding as much, just as long as the water stays in there, which it generally does. So to prep the milk, let's heat it up to about 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 71 to 82 degrees Celsius. Try to keep it steady for about 15 to 30 minutes. We have some wiggle room here. This process helps denature the protein. We are relying on the bacteria interacting with those milk proteins to get that consistency that we love. If you don't heat it up that much, it may not set as firmly. Also, some milks just don't set as much as other types of milk, so it's okay. If you prefer to use raw or heat-treated milk, heat the milk up to your desired temp, then lower the heat down to that sweet spot for our cultures to thrive and multiply. 110 to 115 Fahrenheit or 43 to 46 degrees Celsius. Just note your yogurt may be thinner than desired. There are other ways to thicken your yogurt, which I'll get into later on. Once our milk cools down to our target temp, let's add our cultures in and give it a good stir to evenly distribute the cultures throughout the milk. If you're using store-bought or an older packet yogurt as your starter, make sure you're using live cultures. The label should state whether it's live probiotics. I like to set the jar in my oven with the light on. I've used yogurt therms in the past, but I really like how simple and non-porous glass jars are and easy to sterilize. Either way, let your yogurt jar rest for a few hours to overnight. In some place semi-warm, such as on top of the fridge, also works. The longer you ferment it, the tangier your yogurt is going to be. Also, if your yogurt is only fermented for a couple hours, it may be a little runny, then the longer it ferments. Not to worry, it'll continue to thicken as it cools down as well. Let's make it Greek. For a thick Greek-style yogurt, strain your yogurt through a cloth-lined colander or butter muslin. Sometimes when using a cheesecloth or butter muslin, it may drain unevenly so the edges are firmer than the center of your glob here. To fix that, I like to give it a good stir, or even whip the yogurt to make it extra fancy. Now on to troubleshooting. So after all your hard work, you come to find your yogurt is still too thin. A lot of store-bought yogurts have thickeners in it. I don't have a lot of experience with thickeners in yogurts, but some common additives used at the start of the yogurt making process are a few tablespoons of powdered milk, or I've also seen various numbers using carrageenan, agar, or even gelatin to thicken your yogurt. If you're not careful though, you might end up with a panna cotta instead. One study found that adding cream back into your base milk, then continuing on to the yogurt making process, will also help in thickening up your yogurt base. I saw one study in particular on the addition of sheep's milk into goat milk's yogurt as a method to create a thicker yogurt overall. The amount of sheep milk to add though was variable, but still an option. An age-old technique to thicken thin yogurt is by straining your yogurt. There is an added benefit by removing the excess whey. It also removes most of the harder to digest lactose. This is good news for our lactose intolerant friends and family members. The longer you drain your yogurt, the thicker your final product will be. Now on to too thick. If you're draining your yogurt and it ends up being too thick, it helps to take some of your reserve whey, whip back into the yogurt, which may result in a creamier, even pipable treat. If you're having problems with your fermentation, there's several causes for yogurt to fail to ferment. Let's start from the top of the list. First, we have sanitizer residue. Sanitizer residue on tools, equipment, or in your milk prevent the culture from doing their job. If you're wondering how can I get sanitizer in my milk, this happens mainly when you're milking using milking equipment and not flushing your lines enough. Then the milk mixes with your sanitizer and bulk tank if you have one. Washing off all the cleaner thoroughly helps prevent this from happening. Next up, incubation temp being too high or too low. Our yogurt strands have their preferred growth temp. If it's too low, they're sluggish. Too high, it weakens the culture, both causing a weak to no ferments. On that note, if your culture is bad, weak, or dead, it'll also fail to ferment. Lastly, milk that has a high level of contaminating bacteria that have outcompeted your yogurt cultures. If you have a sick milker or hand milking techniques that maybe could use a bit of improvement, it can cause some serious bacteria problems. If you made it this far, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful feral summer, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and until next time, stay unique.